WISHSHA. I am absolutely honored to be here. Hello. Yes, great to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Just even thinking about the ways that like the museums are, or what the museums are responding to, what they exhibit. It's a proclamation of their ownership of our archives and catalogs, what gets sold as representative of Black American culture, of something of value, of something that deserves the sort of public, attention. But also that they have the resources to
do it. Right.
That's huge. Right? Like, because what does that mean for those of us who are creating the culture and don't have the resources to assert the context of the work and its value in institutions that are respected, right? Like, so there's a lot there. This was incredible. Okay. I'm talking about the writer's process when you're writing about Black people who died restlessly and therefore are present as ghosts with something that has been unresolved, with them, and that they are coming to us to kind of help deliver them from that bond of the site of injury. That's beloved.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Small Talk is a tribute to also the late, great Gil Scott-Heron, whose very first recording was Small Talk at 125th Street, which was about really bringing a certain kind of intimacy to the Black arts movement, and we wanted to replicate that intimacy in a way that would be accessible to regular folks, particularly here in the city of Durham, to come on campus and be able to engage with some incredible thinkers and scholars and writers and DJs, et cetera, et cetera. How you doing, Lene?
Generally good. I'm traveling a lot, and so
That's always a good thing.
it is. But I'm pushing 50,
Yeah.
so the body is like, yes, I'm 49.
Get it.
Avocados. So the body is telling me to sit down as soon as possible.
And welcome back to Duke.
Thank you.
7 years ago, you came through my Michael Jackson and Prince class with your turntables. And what was an amazing exhibition. And I know you, right? My first connection with you were these, a couple ones. One, it was Michael Jackson
Yes.
at the Apollo,
Schomburg.
at the Schomburg,
Yes,
right?
yes.
With AJ and all these other
Yes.
folks, that we had this amazing,
Yes.
conversation
Yes.
about Michael Jackson. And then, of course, I had been introduced to you through your mixes, right? You have been building a
Wow.
body of knowledge, sonic knowledge, right? And these mixes that you were making available. I particularly remember one that you did for the rides in Brixton.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Going back to
Jeez.
1981. So,
Yes.
yeah, no, I mean,
Okay.
you got a discography.
No, this is okay. Now you're digging through the crates. Okay, nice.
I need to shout out a few folks. Our producer and director, Eric Barstow, who has been behind the helm for the last 5 years, since the mid of season 10. Jakaya, who's the associate producer and editor, the Eagle graduate. We won't hold that against her. Also need to shout out our graduate assistant and social media person, Lexi Holloway, who's up there in the back, who's writing this amazing dissertation on Black classical music.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Also got to shout out one of my students, and there were a few of them who are around today who helped us set up, who were in my Black digital class. And they are now workshopping with Eric to be able to do production and other kinds of things. And I want to say you are Durham native, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so Dorm is definitely in the house. I want to read some names first, right? Because this was the thing that got me as I'm reading the book. And I'm not going to name all the names, but ones that resonate for me. Zora Neale Hurston, Greg Tate, Dorothy Ashby, Ruth Brown, Esther Phillips, Suge Avery, Claudia Jones, Abby Lincoln, Tina Marie, Rosetta Tharpe, LaWanda Page, Moms Mabley, and Latasha Harlan. Right? You dedicate your book to those folks and others. Talk a little bit about why those names were so significant for you, that you needed to honor them when you did this book.
Yes, I mean, Greg Tate, MF Doom, Tina Marie. I think about something that Alice Walker said years ago that stayed with me, that stays with me, that I talk about every time I'm kind of thinking through the, I think, sacred act of paying tribute to a sort of lineage and to genealogies. And so Alice Walker talks about acknowledging the ancestors in her line of work. And those are who those people are, including Latasha Harlins. For those of you who don't know, in the 1980s, Latasha Harlins was shot and killed by a Korean shop owner. That shop owner received probation, and actually it was part of the fuel that sort of ignited the spark for the LA riots, although we continue to say one person's name, right, Rodney King.
Latasha Harlins was 15 when she was shot and killed by a liquor store owner, a Korean immigrant who accused the teen of trying to steal a bottle of orange juice.
We grew up together. We only 4 months apart. So we grew up together in the same house all the way from birth till the day she passed away.
It was actually Latasha Harlins who was my age and who I witnessed being killed, and that murder was, essentially treated like, something that required probation. And I'm not even someone who's advocating for any kind of sort of engagement with the carceral system, but it's just about the question of the worthiness of Black life. So here I have an opportunity to publish a book. I want to say her name as part of my thinking and part of my loving.
How did you get to become DJ Lene Denise?
My parents' record collection. It was about how my mother had alcohol near the record player. It was about how she signed her name on her records. It was about how they were organized. It was about how her listening practice was radically different from my father's. And so I learned about the idea of like listening as a kind of signature, even to who you are as a person. So my mom's signature was very much so like synthy 80s funk, SOS Band, Lakeside, Marvin Gaye, certainly all the P-Funk stuff, and Prince. My dad was very much so more serious jazz man, Grant Green, Wes Montgomery, Coltrane, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock. My sister was upstairs listening to new wave, hip hop, Tina Turner a lot. And so their listening practices shaped my ear to the point where I began to want to establish my own listening, my own personality.
And what were you listening to?
Hell, I was listening to, all the stuff my mom and my sisters were listening to, but I will say that the first time I sort of ventured outside of the house was towards ventured outside of the sort of family-based listening practice was Bob Marley. Was Bob Marley?
Which album?
I'm embarrassed to say just because I talk about it, legend.
Of course. I mean,
I talk about it.
More people were introduced to Marley than want to admit.
It's the entry point.
Right. Everybody wants to believe they're like this deep, Marley head, but everybody started with Legend.
Little Birds. That was how One Love, Yeah, and I will say, so then at some point my parents got divorced, my sisters and I were separated, I went my own way, went with my dad, and I began to do deep dives into East Coast rap, which is different because I'm from LA. So my sister was listening to a lot of NWA and, well, not a lot of NWA, but she was listening to just some of the West Coast stuff. And I was like, yeah, but who is this Karis One? And why is he telling me to stop eating beef? And why is he talking about I need to read more about what Reagan and Bush are doing? And how come he's saying that folks in the Bible were black and that this sort of, you
Why
know,
is that?
yeah, like literally, why is that? Is it because we're the minority? Well, black kids follow me. And I was like, okay, first of all, I need to memorize all these lyrics so that I can recite them in my speaking voice and give the impression that I'm informed to this. It's like, well, you know, in 1973, and then accidentally rhyming. So 73 is when you can, that's like, no, that's not what I was trying to do. But I am trying to say that hip hop, East Coast hip hop in particular, was a part of my sort of critical consciousness, you know, I feel like I was developing a critical consciousness through East Coast hip hop. And that is like where my voice is and my listening practice. Yeah.
Why does Willie Mae Thornton matter? You know, give us a kind of listening memoir of your relationship to Willie Mae Thornton.
Yes. So I guess the background story, this book is a part of a series, a Why Music Matters series. And originally, the editors reached out and asked me to consider writing about Prince. And I was like, I think that there is no question and no doubt about why Prince matters. There is plenty of material, like there is no shortage of Prince information. Your classes, my classes, Greg's work.
The symposium they're having in Brooklyn this weekend.
And that they have had every year since his passing, how they honor every album. It was the 30th anniversary of Parade last month. And right, like, so there's no shortage of people digging through Prince's crates, right? What happened was I was in a graduate seminar with Dylan Rodriguez, and he had us reading Clyde Woods' Blues Epistemology.
Great book.
Arrested Development, rather, right? And I was just like, I actually have a very limited relationship with the blues. My grandmother was very much so a sort of Coco Taylor, 80s blues woman. But I associated blues with kind of just like, older Black folks, Southern folks. Again, coming from LA, so I had a very distant relationship. Also, hip hop wasn't doing a lot of sampling of the blues that I knew of, I should say. I'm sure cats were digging through the crates and sampling the blues, but it wasn't as prominent as like soul and funk and the rock samples that we've all come to know. But I'm just like going down a YouTube rabbit hole. I come across this, not this performance, the one that you all saw, but her performing Ball and Chain at that same sort of Chicago-based television station. And I was like, I don't know who this woman is. I have no idea of who she is. I don't know who this woman is. But the power in her scars on her face, her confidence in front of a wall of men behind her, her clarity about her purpose moved me to such a degree that I was like, I just need to find out more. Come to find out, Willie Mae Thornton is the woman who originally sang Hound Dog, right? And that's how we all know her. What was deeply disturbing to me was that all I knew about this woman was that Elvis Presley sang her song and he became rich. End of story. There's no beginning of the story. There's no, right? It is just that, you know, she is a victim of Elvis Presley's appropriation. And then I was like, hold on. Turns out she has a 40-year body of work. How dare we? Yeah. How dare we spend all this time at what I refer to as the sort of site of injury? Yeah. Which I think we did to Tina Turner too, to be honest. Like, where you don't look at the work and you allow the story and the site of injury to define an entire discography.
Right.
So it was that performance, it was that sort of understanding of blues epistemology as a kind of music-based critique of working class folks and thinking about Black music as a form of social explanation and understanding the blues as a kind of philosophical practice, a sonic practice, and then being like, oh, she's a philosopher. She is, someone that I need to be hearing and listening to. So I just suggested to the editors that I write this book, although there was very little information about her. I was like, well, one thing that DJ culture, gifted me with is the ability to investigate, to chase samples, stories, fragmented histories, and to put together sort of mixtapes based on these sort of seemingly unrelated, parts that I can use to create a whole composition / mixtape and make it make sense, make it tell a story, even though I'm sourcing the material from all these different places. So DJ culture and the practices and the art form taught me how to create a story around her life.
You mentioned not wanting her to be reduced to the side of injury. You also didn't want her to be reduced to her physicality.
Absolutely.
For folks who aren't in the know, you say Willie Mae Thornton, and they don't necessarily know who you're talking about. Who they know is Big Mama Thornton. And you very deliberately choose the book's not why Big Mama Thornton matters, right? You wanted to decouple. The way that her physicality has really overshadowed her musicality, right? And naming the book. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, and I'm really happy with the University of Texas Press because I thought they would push back on me not using that massive name that would have for sure.
It would help them sell books.
It would have for sure helped them sell more books, right? They didn't push back, and they respected my first chapter, which is called Mothering the Blues, where I talk about the difference between what comes up for Black folks when we say Big Mama versus white folks. Of course, I'm generalizing, but I'm talking about the limited white American collective imagination when thinking about Black women who are sized differently, who may refer to themselves as fat or bigger women, right? What comes to mind based on the history of this country, right? And the mammification of Black women who are a certain size. But in 1952, she was invited to be a resident artist at the Apollo. And there was the manager of the Apollo at the time named Frank Schiffman, right? Who, which already, even that, learning about who managed and owned the Apollo, I'm just like, yeah. And she performs as usual. She blows the house down. At the end of one of her performances, he comes out like, now that's Big Mama, ladies and gentlemen, right? And the crowd goes crazy. Yeah, that's who she is, Big Mama. And from that point on, the name becomes a kind of a gimmick so that the record label that she signed to, Peacock Records, is trying to figure out how to market her based on size. And absolutely not based on her musicianship, all the way down to the point where they would not let her play the harmonica. They would only allow her to sing. And a lot of the songs that she sang on Peacock Records referred to her size. My name is Big Mama and I'm 300 pounds of fun, right? Just like an interesting kind of humiliating experience in the music industry, but she also had agency. She also used that name with pride. She also reclaimed it, right? So I am not trying to shame her in her decision-making or shame anyone who refers to her with good deed in their hearts, right? Like we know who we're talking about when we say Big Mama in our homes. We know that that's the highest honor when you're calling somebody a Big Mama, who is mother of the family, not mother of white children, not mothering white homes, not mothering, white women. And so, yeah, I think that it was important for me to call her by the name her mother named her, right? Her name is Benny Willie Mae Thornton, and she's from Alabama, right? And so the other thing and the final thing about her name is an interview that happens with Ray Charles where someone is asking him about Elvis. And when I was just, again, writing the book and going through YouTube and trying to learn about who she was through other artists, I came across, I feel like artists that I've known for years who I never paid close attention to, and that I needed to hear differently so that I could write this book. And the one thing that I noticed about Ray Charles was the funk in his sway. Even when he was, I'm not talking about just being at the piano. And obviously I also understand the sway and the balance of the blind and the disability, right? I understand that, but I think that there was another layer of funk in his movement. Right, like it was always
There's
like
a cadence to
there's a
it.
cadence, there's a phrasing,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Listen, I don't want to talk about Elvis no more." Right, that was right, and he's like, "The mic is here," and he was
Bob
like,
Costas.
"Yes, you okay."
Bob
who am I
Costas.
talking to? Exactly, he's being interviewed by Bob, right?
Don't
And it's
ask
like,
me about no
right,
Elvis Presley.
don't ask me no
Elvis
more.
Presley didn't do nothing but shake his ass, and black people have been doing that for centuries.
And what he said exactly in addition to that was, he ain't doing nothing but the Willie Mae Thornton.
Let me ask it differently. How good was Elvis?
I guess I'm going to lose at least about a third of my fans right now. I think Elvis was person came along at the right time. Well, here was a white kid that could do rock and roll or rhythm and blues or whatever name you want to call it, and the girls could swoon over him. And he was doing our kind of music. He was doing the Willie Mae Thornton, jailhouse rock. That's black music. So what the hell am I supposed to get so excited about, man? But I think all this stuff about saying he's the king and he's the... it's a piece of bunk. Sorry. Next question. Don't ask me no more about Elvis because I've gotten enough trouble as it is.
Did he put "the" in front of
her. Right.
And did he remove Big Mama? Did he just say, Elvis ain't doing nothing but the Willie Mae Thornton? I said, that's the name of the book. That's the name of the book. So really, thank you, Ray Charles, for that. That was him. Like, that's him.
You talk about when you started doing research on Thornton, you use multiple ears, right? Your DJ ear, digital ears, thinking about how her music got translated to digital.
Yep.
Record label ears and the ways that different record labels heard her.
Yep.
And then your curated ears, right? And that was the one that's fascinating me, right? Because, I know you do this sound thing, right? So you hear a song and immediately you're trying to figure out what playlist can I put this
Precisely.
on to contextualize this song in relationship,
Precisely.
right? And if it's something that's outside the box, you start with that song and you start to dig for other stuff to fit into that context. Talk about those multiple listening practices that you have that went into your interpretation of Thornton.
Yeah, thank you for reading the book closely. That means a lot to me. This is why you write the book.
Well, I got to own this. Right?
Yeah, I mean.
What's it say on the back?
Yeah. Like, there is someone
Someplace
who
in
left
here?
a certain something.
Yeah, so Lady Denise tells a hearing about biography in Big Mama Thornton's voice that is fitting because Denise, in her intellectual practice, has been a living embodiment of hearing the Black archive and sound, right? And you can quote me for that.
Yes. Huge honor, huge honor, huge honor. Those listening ears, those different ears, I think, let's just think about you for a second and like what Soul Babies did for me, what the music set did for me, what the music set in particular, because I loved how layered it was. I mean, many, many layers, right? But one of the most important things that stayed with me is this idea of a Black American diaspora. Black American diaspora, positioning the Black South as a kind of motherland, right, from which people traveled not just north, right? We learned from, chocolate cities, Marcus Hunter and Zandria Robinson.
Yep.
In particular, that like migration for Black folks wasn't linear, right? We have this story that the Great Migration placed us in this like singular direction, this linear direction.
It's why Snoop sounds like he's from Louisiana.
I would even go as far as saying Mississippi, Alabama, exactly that, right? So thinking about this concept of the Black American diaspora and in conversation with Amiri Baraka saying that Black America is a country, I think about listening to labels based on place. Motown, Detroit, South Soul Records, New York. Like I think about Solar Records, LA, right? And so these record labels are capturing the regional rhythms. And so she was on Peacock Records, which is, right, Texas-based. And it explains how...
And a gospel label.
And a gospel label. It was and jazz. In fact, recently I figured out that Betty Carter was signed to Peacock Records alongside Esther Phillips and Marie Adams, and right. So like, and these people are from different places, but because of their migration or their migratory patterns, they end up in these different cities, signed to these labels, and kind of taking the sounds of the region, filtering them through their own sound system of place. And then you get a kind of Alabama-based Texas R&B from Willie Mae, right? So that's how I had to listen. I'm like, oh, I knew that she grew up in Alabama. I knew that she went through the vaudeville circuit. I knew that she did these like reviews. And she's bringing that kind of showmanship and that energy to Texas. So this is how I'm hearing, the ways in which music, people, and ideas travel in terms of migration. And listening for where she goes, it happens involuntarily, I have to say. Like, I'll be like, oh, listening to Willie Mae, and I hear sort of like, depending on the day, depending on what my ears are doing, I may hear a kind of, and in the book I talk about like a kind of Black folk genre, and I include, Joan Armatradin from the UK, even Jose Feliciano, and I think that she belongs there on these particular days, right? But also because I understand place, I'm thinking about the Bay Area and a kind of Black folk sound, which we don't spend a lot of time thinking about. Like we kind of, the Bay sort of overshadows Black folk music because of the hippie scene. But what I was learning through Willie Mae is that there's this whole Black folk / blues, Oakland-based sound. Like that there were all these Black-owned blues labels in Oakland, right? So I'm like, okay, so it makes sense to place her in these categories with maybe even someone as wild as like a Grateful Dead because of where she was, because of the nature of the blues on the West Coast, because of those migratory patterns, right? So I'm just listening to all those things. And I guess finally, the difference between listening to her in my headphones through my phone versus dropping the needle on the album, and then hearing that big voice come up from under the needle through the speakers versus the voice being sort of, deposited into my body. It's a very different listening, and I hear her differently when I put that needle on the record, and then I have to wait between songs.
And the crackle.
The Crackle, which is one of my favorite songs. I like the right, like I love it.
DJing is obviously one of your intellectual practices, but obviously writing is also. What do you listen to when you write?
Ooh, absolutely nothing. Please turn
wow.
everything off.
Wow.
Turn it all off. Because I'm gonna be like writing it like, hey, I cannot, like, I will be writing and then I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that bass line was coming in so strong. I can't do it because they are competing. If I'm listening, I can't listen and write. They are competing. I have deep love for both. No, I don't have a deep love for writing, by the way. No, that's not true. No, like, let me just reverse that, Jack, because I think Anais, what's her name? Anais Nin said something like, I hate writing, but I love what it, I love the finished product, something like that. Like I'm in that category of quote unquote, I don't even call myself a writer, but writing is one of the things that I use to get the message through. But no, I can't read and write at the same time unless I was listening to her music and writing in response to it.
So thinking about interlocutors in a different kind of context, right? The people that we talk to when we do the intellectual work. Mm-hmm. Who were you talking to when you wrote this book?
Oh, my. You, Greg Tate, Angela Davis, and her book, Blues Legacies and Black Feminism, which I think is, for me, just one of the most important books for the actual text as a whole, because it was so unexpected, right? Angela Davis writing about the blues. I don't even think we know where to place that book in her sort of overall trajectory. And now she's writing about jazz, which I'm very happy about. Hazel Carby, Black British scholar who wrote a lot about the blues in the 80s.
And took Miles to task.
And took Miles to task, and a lot of, Mary Baraka, of course. Zandria Robinson, Saul Williams. Roxanne Shante. Yeah, I was thinking with Roxanne Shante, there's a chapter on, I'm sort of doing this comparison between Willie Mae Thornton and Roxanne Shante. Yeah, that's who comes up off the, of course, Catherine McKittrick, and thinking about, Black music geographies. Of course, Clyde Woods comes back up, but then Clyde Woods sends me to Langston Hughes, and he sends me to Ralph Ellison, and right. So, Maureen Mann, who writes about Black rock, she was a massive figure because she wrote about Black women in rock, and she has a whole chapter on Willie Mae.
Book on the Black Rock Coalition.
Absolutely, right? She's married to Greg Tate's brother, Brian Tate, so then that Black Rock Coalition was there. And then there were the actual rock women. I was listening to Rosetta Thorpe and Aretha Franklin and Mahalia Jackson a lot. Mahalia Jackson came up a lot for me when I was writing about Willie Mae. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, many, many people I was in conversation with.
We started with Hound Dog. And unfortunately, if you are introducing Willie Mae Thornton to a lay audience, that's where you start, right? Because that's the way that she's most legible to us. Talk a little bit about her history with that song, the role of Lee Burns Stoller, who wrote the song, and her reaction to what happens when Elvis records. And Elvis is complicated, right?
Yeah.
In many ways, it's easy to cast him as a culture bandit. I was always struck by the way that B.B. King, when he was alive, always provided so much of a layered context, right, to Elvis's relationship to Black music, right?
Yep.
He loved Black music.
Yep.
Right, and so what came out of him was, in some ways, in his mind at least, right, showing respect to it, which is very different than how Tom Parker, right, his manager, right, processed that relationship with Black music.
Ooh, in the book I talk about, I knew I had to write about Hound Dog. I was trying to figure out how to not, but how can you? Right? But one of the things I say when talking about Hound Dog is like, I was ready to put a literary hit on Elvis. I was ready. I'm about to tell you about yourself, right? Like in my book, I have a platform. You're about to be told about what you've done to Black people, Elvis, right? Like it's you, it's me and you, Elvis. Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant, right? To be as a straight out racist, the sucker was simple and plain, motherfuck him and John Wayne, mother boop, him and John Wayne, right? That's my Elvis context. That's where I was starting. That's where it came from. And in fact, I started that chapter just breaking down every second of that song. Cause I was like, then the Bomb Squad comes in, Flavor is up next, and he would write, like, I went in and I was like, it doesn't feel right. Let me dig deeper. I start learning about the millions of Black fans that Elvis has.
Yep.
And they include B.B. King, they include 3-6 Mafia, they include Sammy Davis Jr., they include just like these massive people who we respect.
Right, Sam Cooke.
Because Memphis and Mississippi and East Trigg Baptist Church. He is sitting in the back row in pews in Black Mississippi churches, Memphis churches. I mean, listen, he was fully socialized, he was conditioned by Black music and living next door to Black folks. He was a part of a segregated world in Mississippi, but also has, indigenous ancestry. He's a complicated person. Yep. So to take us back to Hound Dog, so I'll go backwards. So he records it in 1956. It blows up, of course. as we speak, as we sit in this room right now, Elvis is still making money from Hound Dog, yeah? Which means, as we speak right now, Willie Mae is still not, right? That's okay. So she is on Peacock Records. I'm going back 4 years. In 1952, she goes on tour with Johnny Otis. Johnny Otis is an interesting character. He is a Greek man, was a Greek man from the Bay. His family is from Greece. He was black passing in a way. It's an interesting question. I'll be curious about how you would describe him, but and he was a musician. He's also the father of Shuggie Otis, if you all are familiar with the song Strawberry Letter, 22, right? That he married the original, right? Quincy Jones was involved with, right? The brothers Johnson, yes. But he originally wrote, right? His son Shuggie Otis was just like this massive guitarist. Anyway, Don Roby, who was president of Peacock Records at the time, reaches out to Johnny Otis and says, like, I want you to kind of take Willie Mae under your wing. She can go on tour with you and your review. They ended up in LA, and Don Roby is like, I want you to record a song with her. And from the start, Don Roby is clear, I'm gonna take publishing credit, which was standard, right, for Peacock Records and Mini Records.
Any of you ever seen the Five Heartbeats?
It's that.
Big Red
Yes.
is loosely based on Don Roby.
Yes, shaking people over the, absolutely, a mobster, no doubt, beat up Little Richard, it's in the book. So, Johnny Otis is rehearsing in his garage. He invites Willie Mae, he invites two teens to come to this rehearsal, Lieber and Stoller, right? And they come and they see Willie Mae, and some of the language that they use, I ended up reading their memoir. I mean, it was infuriating. Anyway, they walk in, they're like, oh, she's a monster, she's a big one, she's a bear, right, all of this. And it's in their book, it's their words, right? We saw her, we saw the scars on her face. We wanted to, write a song that would make it clear that she's big and bad and just like just dehuman, just what we know, the basics here. And so they scribble some lyrics on a napkin. They go home to continue to write. Same day, come back, and You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, or Hound Dog is born from them, from, their sort of co-writing practice. They present the song to Willie Mae. We want you to sing it like that. I'm not singing it like that. We want you to, you, and literally, she grabs her crotch and it's just like, no, you can have this, like literally one of those kind of people. Like, you can do this, right? And so she's like, I'm singing in my own way. And also, I'm not gonna include the chicken and watermelon references that you have in here, right? And Johnny Otis agrees and is like, yeah, we're not gonna sing about chicken and watermelon. Right? So she sings the song, and what is really important, full circle, about Hound Dog is the ad-libs, right? Is, oh, sugar, you right? And even I heard you all respond to her being like, roof, or whatever she, right? Like, because she actually always ad-libs through, right, when she performed the song. That's important because one of the things that Angela Davis taught me was that when she wrote this book and was like doing this deep dive on the lives of Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, and Billie Holiday, one of the things that she does is goes into, I think, the Smithsonian, listens to their lyrics, understands that many of those lyrics are written by men, black men, white men, and finds who those women are through their ad-libs. That's where their intellectual property is, and in the phrasing, right? And so Ruth Brown is someone who was arguing for, like, trying to figure out the intellectual property around phrasing, right? So, like, Willie Mae is, doing all these ad-libs, and so she maintained that she was a co-writer because of those ad-libs. However, she got nothing she got $500 up front for Hound Dog. And also, when they recorded in 52, he put it on the shelf, Don Roby, right? He released it the year later, and it blew up on Black radio. In fact, it was part of why she was at the Apollo and when she got named, right? She was in Ohio when she heard the song on the radio for the first time. She's like, hey, turn that up, that's me, right? But And then Elvis comes along in 1956 and records it. And literally the rest is history. And when you think about their parallel lives from that moment and what history means in that context, it means, and I talk about this in the book, that I believe that the American music industry in particular replicates a plantation model, especially when we're talking about the blues, right? As being sort of one of the first kind of like Black American true like folk song practices that were recorded, produced, right, and distributed. And so it's just really, really deep to think about this idea of like Black labor and white wealth, which I deal with a lot in the book, and those plantation politics. And so, yeah, but again, I mean, I guess finally I'll say that for those of you who are interested in, you know, maybe fictional blues, which is something that was also super important to my writing, thinking about Shug Avery, which is why I include her, Gail Jones, who writes about the blues, all the, you know, sort of blues fiction, but your blues ain't like mine, right?
The Alice Walker.
Alice
essay,
Walker.
Short story.
1955. Alice Walker writes an amazing fictional story, short story, on how she understands the relationship between Willie Mae and Elvis Presley. And she renders Elvis Presley human, a vulnerable person who is struggling and literally dying on the inside because he cannot touch the meaning of the songs he's performing and being paid for. He continues in Alice's story to come back to Macy Gray, is what, not Macy Gray. Can Macy Gray not be part of it? Okay, Macy Gray, she has to make herself known here. Like, all right. But, you know, she fictionalizes both characters, gives them different names, and Elvis's character, Trevor, comes back to Willie Mae and says, like, what is the song about? She's like, oh, you got to fill in it. No, what is the song about? I'm singing all of this and I'm making millions a day. She's like, millions? Which, right? Like, you gave me 1,000 for that song. I mean, it's a whole thing that Alice Walker does. I would advise you to find that story. But yeah, at the end of the day, we learn that Elvis is still benefiting from Hound Dog. Willie Mae died in a pauper's grave. Like, and also that Elvis Presley was worked to death. Elvis Presley struggled with a food addiction. And Elvis Presley's legacy and the how of his death is fiercely protected. Like the serious work that went into kind of protecting his image so that there would be no sort of confusion about his natural causes that he died, right? Like versus him dying with a whole lot of drugs in his system, like Whitney.
The fried banana sandwiches.
With peanut butter and regular butter, and all the Black women who were cooking for him, who he bought homes for, and yes.
So I'm gonna go someplace where I kind of have to go.
Okay.
What would Willie Mae say to Beyonce if she had anything to say?
That is great. No, I'm channeling Willie Mae now. I'm trying to. I'm trying to listen. In fact, you know, because she was such a blues purist. Like she was someone who, if I'm honest, I think that I'd be surprised. What I love about her is that I think that she'd be so distant from what a Beyonce is. And not because of the reason why so many folks are trying to have distance from Beyonce, but because like she talked about what she listened to daily for years, which were spirituals, Mississippi Blind Boys, about always Mahalia Jackson, like, and this is in the context of her contemporaries. Like she said that she was not listening to the radio, you know, like she had her own sort of Black gospel / spiritual based listening. That was her primary mode of listening. So I think that like the way that Beyonce presents too, I think it may pinch a nerve just because Beyonce is the kind of hyper femme, right? And Willie Mae is giving you overalls, cowboy boots, and she suffered because she refused to be high femme, feminine anything, really. I mean, although I do still read her and read her as feminine, or different, just like iterations of femininity. But I think that like Beyonce kind of represents that thing that they were trying to push her into anyway. But musically, I don't know. I don't deny Beyonce's talent. I really don't. But I think that it's just like compared to what she listens to, I think it'd be like,
What couldn't you, or what weren't you able to include in this story about Willie Mae?
That's an amazing question. I was trying to make this connection between Jamaican sound systems and ska, and R&B and Willie Mae. And the editors are like, we understand it, Lene, but it's gotta stay behind. Unless you like work it into, and I couldn't work it.
That's a B-side.
It is a B-side.
That's a B-side
And I
to
have
the
it as a
book.
chapter. It's
Yeah,
just sitting there.
That's a B-side of a book.
Yeah. There's a deep connection between ska and even Willie Mae and Peacock Records and Miami radio and Memphis radio and New Orleans radio, which a lot of, sound men were listening to, or the Jamaican migrants who would be in Florida and Louisiana and coming back to, as migrants, right? And going back to Jamaica with records and going back to Jamaica with the consciousness of like rent parties, right? And setting up shop in Kingston and playing some of those R&B records, some of which were from Peacock Records. I was trying to make the connection.
So let me go someplace else for a moment. We're witnessing the sunset of American culture. And it seems ironic that in this moment of the closing of the American imagination, if you will, that they are mining the history and catalog of Black culture. I think about, and I love the Harlem Renaissance, right? When I get to New York, I'm going to see that whole thing at the Met. But why now? Right? Why mine this now at this moment? Why open up, despite the pushback, right? Why open up this moment of Beyonce's and having Beyonce do the labor of a deep dig into a Black cultural presence in country music, right? Including folks who contributed to country music before it was called country music.
Charlie Pride.
Right.
I'm just thinking.
Oh, right. And all the folks who came before them, right?
Amazing.
How do you feel about that, right? One, as a DJ who mines the catalog, and as a critic, right? What does this moment say to you about the relationship of U.S. culture to this archive of Black joy, Black desire, Black misery, Black death, right? We could go on and on with what's being mined in this moment.
Mining is such an interesting word. And I want to say it to some degree is happening globally. And I say that just because I am based in Amsterdam, I'm based in Johannesburg, but I'm thinking about London. There's a similar thing happening where you have these sort of British institutions that are mining the 1980s movement. In particular, you talked
Tate
about the
Museum,
Harlem, but
right?
precisely all the Isaac Julian retrospective. And so, but it seems to be in conversation with a kind of colonial amnesia in an American context, a kind of work that disappears their role. And I would say that it's interesting that you're saying now, when I think about the role of the Smithsonian, when I think about how long they've been mining, where so many of our catalogs are, who owns so many of our masters, I think that this is, but maybe you're talking about a kind of reach, because I believe we're watching an implosion and there are things being grabbed. Palestinians, you know, like blues music, you know, like there's an interesting grabbing that's happening as the ship
As it
is sinking.
collapses, yeah.
So you're right, and thinking about that, but what it's doing is obviously neutralizing, right, these like potent moments. It makes me wish that Baraka was here. I'd be curious about his answer to that question.
I mean, as we do every day, wishing that Greg was still here.
I mean,
Like literally do every day, right? I wonder what Greg would think about this.
and I wonder what Prince would think about it. Who went head up with Warner Brothers as well, with that understanding that his work was being mined by Warner Brothers, so much so that he takes back his name and makes it impossible for them to pronounce. It's in that family of resisting the grab.
Right. I think about Aretha,
Ooh,
who only wanted to be paid in cash and walked around with thousands of dollars of cash in her pocket. Right? Like she would be somebody who would get her master's back and carry her master's around in her pocketbook. Right? You know, not wanting to ever lose connection to what's hers.
and meanwhile, Prince left it all behind. No will. And in that keeping it close that Aretha did, we then find out that she has her will, an updated will that's stuck in between the cushions of the couch. It's in the same family. And you know those memes on Instagram that are just like, Mama, where's my birth certificate? Hold on. Going under the bed.
Because we talk about archives, right? And we think about places like the Smithsonian, we think about boxes and stuff.
But what about grandma's
Black
house?
folks archive, but it's, you know.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
It's under the bed.
It's under
in
the bed.
Closet.
It's in the basement. It's in the attic for sure. It's in Big Mama's bra.
Yeah.
Right, there's an archive in some of those movies. Like, people were pulling out birth certificates, you know, like, or like there are things that are close to the books. So yeah, Aretha is in that family too of this kind of Detroit-based resistance of like, no, give me my money. Now, very, very Detroit red energy of like, very Nation of Islam energy as in Detroit, very like her daddy energy, right? Like, of protecting those archives, all the way down to her deep fight against having Amazing Grace, you know, I was going to say published, but released and distributed, right?
Or the two versions of it, right? The
Right.
fact that they did the live recording.
Right.
And then she goes into the studio in New York,
And
right? And sweetens it, and which is why
Post-production.
there's two versions of
Right.
the album.
Right. But that she was like, you're not releasing that film while I'm alive.
Right.
And that the film was released like, what, 2 weeks after she passed? Yeah. But she fought. But to me, it lets me know that she was fighting to the end.
Right. We're going to listen to Ball and Chain,
Okay.
and then we're going to open this up to the audience for questions.
We like to sing this song for you. I wrote this song, ladies and gentlemen, in 1960. And the late and great Janis Joplin, she asked me, could she do it? So I told her yes. But I had the pleasure of putting it on the record before she did. So here it is, in my own way, the way I wrote it. And she might have did some changes, I don't know. You see, I can't sing like nobody but me. I might do your song, but no way in the world I can do you. All right, fellow, D minor, slow and easy. Take it like B.B. King style.
I mean, there it is.
I didn't tell you to get ugly with it. I just said play it. And it's also dedicated to my baby sister. She's out there in the audience somewhere. And her friend. And also Doo-Doo and all the little Doo-Doos. I see them running around here. Sitting by my window. Sitting there looking out at the rain. Sitting by my window, babe. Oh, looking out at the rain. Something struck me. Clammed on like a ball and chain. Oh, Lord. Hey, hey, baby. Why you wanna do these old things to me? Hey, hey, baby. Why you wanna do these mean things to me? Is it because I love you? And that is why you wanna keep me in misery? Oh Lord, ball and chain, play your soul, baby.
Hey, 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 hey. Yes.
Know you're gonna miss me. Gonna miss all of those sweet things. Oh, I know you're gonna miss me, baby. I know you're gonna miss all of those sweet things. You found out your heart to be like mine. Oh, wrapped it like a ball and chain. Why do everything have to happen to poor me? Why do everything have to happen to poor me? I know my love gonna last forever. Margarita, ball and chain, ball and chain, ball and chain. I said ball and chain. I want you to, I want you to, I want you to, I want you to turn, turn. Turn, turn. That's right. That's right. Needle. All in jazz.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, of course you can.
Because now I'm listening with different ears. And also this is a nice sound system. So, yeah, I hear Led Zeppelin, I hear The Who, I hear the Rolling Stones, I hear Mick Jagger in particular, I hear Robert Plant, I hear David Bowie, I hear Elvis Presley, but I hear her students. I hear the students, I hear the white students of the blues. I hear that we do not have the so-called British invasion without Mississippi and Alabama. There's no British invasion. There's a return, right, of the Black South to the US from the UK. I hear Liverpool, I hear, right? So, and I also hear someone who, if I had to participate in a binary, I hear a blues man. This is based on my close listening of who we call blues women and what those characteristics are. And that includes who was allowed to move and travel and how we understand the blues as this kind of black man with his guitar moving from train to train, and why we don't envision black women having that same kind of right, that we understand the domestic space that limits their movement. But, you know, Willie Mae had on a full suit while singing that, a three-piece suit. She also rode heavy, heavy, heavy with Buddy Guy, B.B. King, and Muddy Waters. Like she was a part of a black man's blues crew. Right? I would actually go as far as arguing that she is a part of a kind of black male blues history. And I don't know if she's gay or not. That was never my interest or concern. Never, never, never. I mean, I think I'm a finalist for like the Lambda Literary Award. And it's like, you know, this book is being awarded for like, you know, because it has like this like gay, and I was like, okay, I'm queer if that counts. But I know that if you read the book, since I'm getting the, you know, I'm a finalist for the, I hope that, you know, in the introduction, I say, right. She never said that she was lesbian. She never said that she was queer or gay. She never said that. I said it about me. Like, she never said it about herself. And I love that. So when I talk about her as a blues man, I'm not talking about who she loved. I don't know. There's no evidence, there's no record, there's no anything that tells me who she was sleeping with. I just know how she sounds.
Going to open it up to questions.
I want to go back to the question that Mark posed to you about American culture. How did you put it? I have it in my notes.
The closing of the American imagination?
Yeah, like, yes, that, yes. And I'm wondering, as given all the things that you do, all the ways that you engage with culture and Black culture in particular, what do you think Black creatives could be doing, should be doing in this moment to help reclaim what is being grabbed as we go down?
I am from the school of Morrisonian thought in terms of Toni, and how she is so unconcerned. She is just not concerned about white America, and yet can tell you the history, the literary history, the social history. So like, when I say not concerned, I don't mean not invested in a serious, rigorous process of learning the history so that she could bring Beloved to us in ways that allow us as readers to have dignity by simply understanding and being invested in the interior worlds of Black life. I think that like Black creatives, I mean, I don't have a sort of, I think that one of the things that I can say is that part of this cultural grab is connected to a kind of war on intellectual curiosity. But I want to even say, for Black creatives, one of the things that is important for me, and that is a part of my kind of politics, is having intellectual curiosity about global Blackness. Because I have been able to witness the power of those, like, not Pan-African per se, but like these kind of global solidarity lines, South Africa in particular. Like when I think about the jazz histories and the conversation between Black South Africans and Black Americans, and I think about the relationship, say for example, between Miriam Makeba and Nina Simone as an example, or Hugh Masekela and Dizzy Gillespie, you know, Lete Mbulu coming to the US, you know, just like, I think that I'm quite sad about the state of the diaspora and the way that Black Americans are positioned as the kind of major sort of model of what Blackness is, to the point where we miss opportunities to connect beyond ourselves, which is very much so us replicating these white American institutions that have no curiosity about us, and so therefore make up their own narratives, which I feel like we witnessed happen, say for example, with this discussion around Tyla from South Africa, right? And Black Americans being like, no, girl, you're not colored, poor thing, let me tell you who you are, right? That, and what that felt like while living in South Africa and hearing how Black Americans are discussed as people who are not interested in geography and the political history of Black folks in other places. So I would say that I think it's really important for Black American creatives in particular to reach beyond this nation state, but also that I want Black creatives globally to understand that the Black Americanness that is sold as a cultural product from this place denies us distinction as Black Americans who come from a diaspora, a Black American diaspora. So I would be in South Africa and I would hear folks be like, that's a bop. I'll be like, oh, you from Oakland? Or, oh, you know that, not, or you from, but you know that's from Oakland, or what's up, son? Oh, okay, so New York, okay, you gotta, you know, or like, what's up, my shizzy? Like, okay, you, like, and so they'd be like, oh, that's from LA? Oh, that's from North Carolina? Or I'm like, yes, it's a diaspora. And with each place comes song and sound and cuisine and fashion and language, right? That like, place matters. So do not flatten Black American culture, right? And understand and have a kind of interest in Black American geographies, right? So I think that it's really important for us to be much more curious about ourselves. And I think that will create a kind of protective layer of what we create and produce.
I want to add an exclamation point here because of your work. I mean, part of the answer to that, Natalie, is that we do the work. Right? You know that as a creative. Angel, I see Dr. Greenlee back there, Dr. Antonia right here.
Yes.
Folks who are doing the work. There will be, in the next year, 27 books written about Beyonce. Right? We know that there are literally 2,000 think pieces that have been written about Beyonce in the last 10 days. My class a few weeks ago, I screened the Khalil Joseph video for Alice Smith's Black Man.
I put a spell on you because you're mine.
Yes.
None of my students had ever heard of Alice Smith. My response to them was, you don't know who Alice Smith is because you know so much about Beyonce.
Yep.
Right.
Taking up a lot of space.
And that's no fault of Beyonce. right? But the way that she's now centered in American culture, right, it actually squeezes out other examples, right? And so what it means is for you to do the kind of work that you do, knowing that it's never going to get the same kind of light that a book about Beyonce is going to. Right? And so we do that work to do that work, right? Knowing that in the moment, right, it's just not going to get the same kind of sunshine that other work is, right? The other thing that you do that's important here, right? Blues criticism has been a white man's critical space. Right, Daphne Brooks talks about this in terms of rock criticism, right? What does it mean for you as a black woman to write yourself into this critical position?
Oh, that's an actual question? No, it was like, yeah, okay, I was caught up in that. I mean, yes, I have a chapter called White Biographers and Blues Mixtapes, and I can't remember the name of these shows. That's the other thing. I'm curious about how much you remember from your books once you put them down. If you have this kind of relationship where it's like, I gave birth and I'm walking away. But no, but that history of ghostwriting, of like the white male blues paternal figure, the white father of the blues is what I talk about. Like, oh, you guys are not caring for it as much. No worries. We'll have this string of festivals and
documentaries.
And listen, if I want Ken to burn, no, I'm kidding. That's too much. No, that's too much. No, but I'm serious, right? Because narrative matters. Narrative matters, and I feel like I'm very much so rooted in cultural studies and the work of Stuart Hall and thinking about the role of narrative as a colonial tool. I mean, we know, and as a way to kind of disguise these deeply harmful ideologies, right, that are used to frame the blues where it becomes universal, right? And it becomes something that needs to be cared for because black folks stop caring for the blues. So out of the goodness of their hearts,
We're going to correct their way.
Yeah, right? No worries, we'll finance that, right? So, and I also want to just say bell hooks to think about Beyonce again, because what I regret is that comment about terrorism wasn't fleshed out. And also that Bell Hooks said that in a kind of soundbite social media culture, and she had no idea that that was gonna take off like that. She had no idea that, quite honestly, I would go as far as saying that that was gonna be a kind of beginning of an end of her legacy. I wanna go that far because I wanna bring it back to what I felt when I saw Beyonce on a horse with a flag. In this moment, any moment, but this moment, there is y'all got your hands in another part of the world, and we are witnessing where our tax dollars go. We are witnessing a socially engineered famine in the name of red, white, and blue and white nation states. You are coming out here with a flag on a horse and connecting that to. So of course there are ways we can read that reclamation, but I just think that it is tone deaf. But I also think that the word terrorism matters. I think.
That's what Erica Edwards tells us.
Yes. Hello. So Bell's use of terrorism to describe Beyonce becomes interesting when you think about it in relation to your students not knowing Alice Smith. Like that part of the terrorism is a kind of manufactured or a rather multi sort of pronged system of erasure of other black women's voices. And so that is a kind of terroristic, I feel like institution around Beyonce. And I also feel like I know we didn't plan on talking about Beyonce, but I do think it's an important moment. But like, there's something about her role in the war on intellectual curiosity, even in the reluctance to critique her. And again, Bell Hooks as a cultural critic, like whose job it was to be critical. And now we are learning through Beyonce that not everyone can be critiqued as artists. That's right. So like, there's a kind of, so I'm struggling with Beyonce. I'm not sure if you all are aware. I wrote, probably like a glowing review of Renaissance for the Oprah Daily. I was very proud of myself. I stand by it. But let me tell you, I mean, the moment she partnered with Madonna, right at the height of the conversation about the erasure of Black queer life, again, the timing, I'm talking about people were like, my uncle died of AIDS too, and my such and such was in ballroom culture, and also not to mention how an album like, Renaissance can save lives. That sounds oversimplified, but I do mean what it means to have like a visible trans community producing your album when we know that these folks are dying the most because they suffer from a kind of visibility, but they also suffer from an invisibility about or around what they contribute culturally. So that all we know about trans folks is that they die. Black trans women in particular is that they die. But through Renaissance, we learned that Honey Dijon has a hell of an ear and is producing Beyonce. And that perhaps that can save a life. Then you bring in Madonna, who represents, listen, I come from the Madonna, Nile Rodgers school of thought. Holiday, I grew up and I was shaped by Madonna too. I had a crush on Madonna. But there's something important about what Vogue did and how that was in conversation with Jenny Livingston's Paris is Burning and all the folks who were no longer with us from that cast, who Madonna didn't name. She named white Hollywood figures. So I get it. Beyonce was like, and you know what? We're going to bring in Madonna, but then we're going to name, it was a lot. So I think that me and Beyonce are we're just going through it. We go through it because I love bell hooks. That's why.
Angel Dozier.
I always seem to feel speechless when I hear you speak about this book and when I hear you speak, because I have questions, but then I'm like, oh, there's no silence is important. And I'm making that choice to speak right now because you talked about, one of the things I love and respect about your speaking about Willie Mae Thornton is that you say, we don't know what Willie Mae's sexuality was, right? And I think about the fact that when you mention migration and when you mention Roxanne Shante, who also is rooted in North Carolina, rooted in the South.
Who knew? Okay.
From North Carolina. And so is MC Sha-Rock. They are both North Carolinians whose families migrated to New York, like my mother did. Or my mother was born in Harlem. I think about a knowing, right? Which is where my question comes from. Like, with regard to language and people protecting their privacy, which we deserve to have, absolutely deserve to have, and people are constantly trying to make us be more public about our personal business. Totally. Our personal business is important to us.
Totally.
And I think about this knowing and what's coming home to roost. Because do we know inherently what Willie Mae Thornton's sexuality is? There's no language for it. But I wonder if you think about like the code or the unspoken languages that we all continue to understand. And I think during the pandemic, this was a way in which I started to rediscover my ear for it. So I'm curious about like thinking about the Great Migration, thinking about codes, thinking about unspoken language, and the fact that even Roxanne Shante, who you refer to, who I love, and even with like the idea that a person like Nas is like my career or my interest in hip hop is because of Roxanne
Yep.
Shante.
Queensbridge.
Understanding that unspoken language and making sure that it's spoken in some way based on maybe privilege. So I'm just curious about this language, this idea of language and the unspoken, that knowing.
And coding. I love that you're talking about a coded language and a knowing and a Black privacy in that. Because, yes, I part of my commitment to not even trying to name who Willie Mae loves and is sleeping with is about my respect for and protection of her privacy. But some of the coded things, for example, that came up for me is like how when she is performing in an all-males prison in the 1970s, she doesn't change pronouns, right? Like when she's talking about, you know, who she loves and sometimes uses she, right? But I mean, and that's interesting because speaking of Luther, I would always listen closely to see and how I felt when Luther said she. And I was like, I don't know, Luther. I don't know. And me not knowing is because it's none of my business and I can't know. And that he's using codes. And even if they're codes of survival, maybe they're codes of the art form, maybe she sounds better than he in terms of the sonic and the phrasing, who knows? But like, what is interesting to me is that, and this is the last time I'm going to bring up Beyonce. It really is, I promise. As the kids say, what the gag is about Beyonce is that she is one of the most private people we have seen in our lives.
We know so much about her and don't know anything.
We don't know anything about this woman. I don't know. That to me is one of her biggest accomplishments because had Whitney had whatever it is that she has to protect her privacy, maybe Whitney would be here. Maybe Michael would be here. Maybe they would be here.
Luther would still be here.
That's interesting.
Right.
That's interesting. Yes, right? So like, yeah, I'm not even really answering your question, but I am thinking about like the work that Toni Morrison does too to protect Black privacy is by not writing about white folks. And like part of the code for her is the absence of white people as primary figures in her work. That's a code. That is a code. I don't have to engage, like that's not even like, and I mean, she's writing about Beloved at the height of like, I mean, like we don't learn about the system, we don't learn about the plantation system. She said that. I wanted to stay away from the institution and really tune into the interior lives of these people, which of course are inescapably linked to the institution. This is why, you know, Beloved returns as an embodied memory, but she manages to speak to us. And some of that is about language, right? Some of that is about just like, yeah, Toni Morrison has just like a bibliography of coded Black life, I would say. And I think that there are so many academics and just casual readers who are gonna be decoding Toni for the rest of our lives. Beloved in particular is heavily coded, right?
We'll take one more question.
Yeah. I was thinking about Willie Mae Thornton's singing. Mm-hmm. And I haven't had a chance to read the book, so I don't know if this is addressed, but I was listening to her phrasing and all that she was doing at the end of that song that you just played. She was an exquisite singer, but I wonder, and also that you said she didn't listen to blues. She listened to other things, anything like spiritual stuff, gospel, but not the blues. And the other thing I was thinking about was that Whitney Houston always returned to gospel, and she listened to other people, but gospel was, what were her pleasures in singing? Like, what was she aiming to achieve in the singing? The way she ended that song was like a a poet, mining the meaning of words. She was an excellent singer. Did she get pleasure out of singing? Was it just work? You talked about in the other panel you did for the pop music series that she liked to drink. Like, was singing a pleasure? Like, what was singing to her?
You know, so the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that I didn't read her so much as an exquisite singer. I read and I understand her as a hollerer, coming out of an Alabama field hollering tradition. So even when she, like when she hits that high note and everyone was like, it is not a high note that is like, technically well executed high note. It is a holler. It is a high pitched falsetto holler. It's a falsetto holler, right? And that field hollering is a genre of music, of Black music, and a style that is important when you think about the context of it, again, right? Plantation references, field work references, and the songs that emerge from the fields, from the plantation, and how we, again, speak with a kind of coded tongue. So I hear in her voice as a singer a kind of Southern, radical, churchy, I want to say resistance, but I know we're talking about pleasure. But I mean the resistance to have this like polished voice, right? And so I think she found more pleasure in talking between the songs. Can we curse on this? Because she was a massive shit talker as a skill that came out of her vaudeville context, that is connected to her superb comedic timing that you all laughed at when she's like, now I may know a song, huh. Just that huh is a code. We know that huh. That is that's a meaningful thing. When you hear Black folks say, I wasn't there, but huh.
The teeth suck in Jamaican patois.
Or the Black American quick, right? The Jamaican one a little longer, the Nigerian a little longer. Like, like the diasporic teeth sucking coded languages. Like when you can hear where someone is from based on how long they suck the tooth. Like, oh, you're West African, got it. Oh, you're Jamaican, right? I'm thinking about South Africans. Yo. Yo. But anyway, but so I would say that she found more pleasure in shit talking because she is rooted in Black, comedic culture. And I would put Little Richard in that category, who she was tight with. Little Richard that's great, his voice, but it's like, again, another like hollering, Georgia, Savannah, like there's a Macon, right? Like that he also hollers, but really enjoyed talking between like talking and the gift of just the oratory, like coded Black life that comes through the mic. Yeah, does that answer it? Because that's an important question for me to think about. Did she find pleasure in singing? Because I felt like she found pleasure in improvisation, like a lot of pleasure. She would brag about how she would never sing the same, the same song twice, or she would never sing the same song with the same style. Thanks for work. No, I needed that. It's true, right? So every time she sings Hound Dog and you hear it on these live versions, especially Ball and Chain, like she switches it up. So I think that improvisation, comedic timing, shit talking between the songs, calling people out, particularly Ronald Reagan. She called out Ronald Reagan a lot, starting from the 70s when he was governor in Cali, because she was there. And one of the things she says is like, well, Ronald Reagan is taking away welfare. I wonder what he's gonna take away next. Then she covers the song Watermelon by Herbie Hancock. She does this, Watermelon Man, she does this whole skit between her and a Watermelon Man, also coded, because depending on where you're from, you know that there are folks selling watermelons, and my grandmother's gonna pick up that watermelon, she's gonna knock it, she's gonna look at the size, she's gonna say, how much for that? But I don't know, like, right? And Willie Mae does that in the song. She does different versions. In one particular version, a watermelon man is trying to sell her a watermelon for $5, and she is taken aback. Like, she's taken aback because also she's in Cali. She's like, I know what you're doing. You're bringing this to Cali, but I know what's happening in Texas with watermelons, and I know you're charging me far more than you would, right? So it's just a whole thing around watermelons. But then she says, and if you keep doing this, I'm gonna tell Ronald Reagan on you. He's gonna come and get you. Ronald Reagan as boogeyman is really important. It's a real important critique. And it's not a fear, and it's not Ronald Reagan as my father and I'm telling daddy on you. It's, I know that he's dangerous. If I tell him the slightest bit of information, he's gonna be overzealous in his pursuit. It's not, right, like that. So yeah, she critiqued Ronald Reagan a lot. She got on stage and talked about how she was arrested, how the LAPD treated her because of her height, because of her size, how she was treated like an aggressive woman/man when she was arrested. She had been in jail several times for fighting. She fought, you know, promoters who tried to keep her money. She kept a knife, she had scars, she did shoe shining, she did security for folks, right? So like, those stories would come through on the stage in between songs.
Renee? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank everyone, thank you. I just want to say a shout out to Dr. Mark Anthony Neal because of, oh my God. Because of so many of us, because of so many of us who come under the work of Dr. Neal, like, and I talked about, I think on social media, like, that his writing about Black music sounds off the page. But for me, like, one important thing that I want to talk about is the close, loving attention that he pays to Black women musicians. Yes. Close attention to their musicianship, to their ideas, to their interior life worlds, to help us understand their mastery, like the treatment of Black women in your writing is for me, it would have been impossible to write this book without the work of Dr. Mark Anthony Neal. I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I'm honored to be here because of the body of work that he's created and modeled for us in the way that Amiri Baraka instructed us to do, right? To write about Black music from our own voices. And Dr. Mark Anthony Neal models that in such an incredible way.
Blacks, they be hyping, I'm the light that lit your match. A black watch for all the times I watch MTV raps. Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who